Hello, my name is Leslie Kane, and I am the host of the Why Not Today podcast. This is a podcast to celebrate people who have been courageous and said, why not today? I started the podcast in honor of my father, Patrick Kane, who often did say, why not today? I am based in Reston, Virginia, Plain Community, right outside of Washington, D.C., and thanks for joining us. And I'm excited for my guest today because I don't really know her very well. So I'm going to get to know you, Charlene. And I've got Charlene Wheeless from Charlene Wheeless LLC. And I always like to talk about, before I introduce the guest, she's got a friend back there, before I introduce my guest, to share like how we connected. So it's a place I connected with you. And as I said, I don't know you very well as a chamber, which I don't know if you realize this, but my dad actually started the chamber.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was one of the founding people for the chamber. I don't know if you know this either, but Alicia Little.
Yes, of course.
You know that?
Really? Oh, no, I didn't know that at all. And, I'm a former chair of the chamber.
Yeah. So I know that and seen you through different chamber events and things, but, kind of funny how they connected. Yeah. I was meeting with somebody one day and I said, my dad started the chamber. They're like, Alicia's dad started the chamber. Do they know each other? I'm like, as a matter of fact, they do. Small little world. So I'm excited to hear your story. I heard you speak at a chamber event last year. Gosh, it was last summer, fall. I just remember it was hotter than heck. And
it was hot, yes.
Almost a year later, we were able to finally connect. So I'm excited for you to share. So why don't you introduce yourself, a little fun fact, and then we'll talk about courage and all your courageous things.
Sure. So hi, everybody. And Leslie, thank you so much for having me on today. It's great to be able to have a conversation and get to know one another live. And to your guests, I'm Charlene Wheeless. I'm the principal CEO of my own company, Charlene Wheeless LLC, where I am a leadership coach and primarily a keynote speaker. So the speaker comes first, and then usually from that, I coach in leadership and life. And I guess my fun fact is that I like to consider myself a recovering C-suite executive. So rather than deep in it, I stepped out of it which was probably a very courageous decision to make. So, but it's great to be here with you, Leslie.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you and hear your story. And I think the first time I met you, I can remember it was roundtables. It was some event years ago when you were working in corporate. I don't remember. It was some event that we sat next to each other. And that's when you were working for, I don't remember who it was, but.
Right. It was probably Bechtel or Raytheon or DynCorp or one of those companies.
Yeah, one of those companies. But isn't it good to escape?
It is. Sometimes you just have to pivot, as I say.
Yeah. And that's what we talk about a lot here is the courage to just leave those comfortable positions and do something different.
Right.
So share with us what your definition of courage is.
Courage to me is taking a step in spite of your fear, right? I happen to think that fear is a huge motivator to do absolutely nothing. And having the courage to say, yes, I'm afraid. And no, maybe I'm scared to death, but I know I need to do something different. And I'm going to take the steps, the courage to do it. And I have something, Leslie, I can't remember if I talked about it when we last saw one another, called 7 Seconds of Courage, and I believe that with 7 seconds of courage, you can do anything that can start to transform your life, your career, your work, your relationships. It just takes 7 seconds of courage.
Yeah. And I've heard that before. I don't know if you or other people, I don't know if you follow Mel Robbins at all.
Right. She does. I think she has a 5 second
rule. Right. You count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But you don't go forward because you could go 6, 7, 8, but you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and just do the things. And when you talk about courage and fear, people think it's a huge thing. Like you left a C-suite job. I left corporate America, but it's often those little things we do that lead up to all those big things.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times we put ourselves in situations where we are subjugated to other people or other things because we don't have courage. And I tell people, particularly, I have 2 daughters, one's 27 and one's 29, and I've taught them from the time they were growing up to remember that every day you are teaching people how to treat you. And I think to live that out takes courage, right? And I would start with them. One of my daughters, her name's is easy. It's Savannah. The other, her daughter is my other daughter. Her name is French, and it's Janae. And so she gets all kinds, as you can imagine, of
Oh, yeah.
pronunciations. And one of the first things I taught her is that, when someone mispronounces your name, don't say, oh, it's okay, everybody mispronounces it. Correct them, because
Right.
that is you. That's your identity. That's your ownership. And the minute you let people be okay with, or think you're okay with them not acknowledging and seeing you, right? Then you've already, started off on a back foot. And I think have the courage, to correct, right? Do
Right.
it kindly, do it gently, do it with compassion, but understand that courage starts with teaching people how to treat you.
Oh, absolutely. So I love your story you shared at the Story Slam. So I don't know, and I know
Mhm.
you do
Yeah.
keynotes. So let's talk about the courageous things you've done in your life. I don't know if you want to go back to the beginning to that story.
Right.
It's
Well,
really
I did.
encouraging, and it goes back to the little girl and and I work. My real job is or the one that pays me is I'm a
Right.
sales director with Mary Kay, and I really work with courage and confidence around young
Mhm.
girls and start them young because they say a girl's self-esteem or women's self-esteem is highest at age 10.
I would believe that.
So scary. And I was
Yeah.
talking to them the other day, and they're like, it's probably even younger than that now.
Right, and it goes down from there, right? We
Yeah.
learn very, very early on what's wrong with us as opposed to what's right with us,
Hmm.
right? And it's based on what other people tell us and other things that we are just bombarded with. And, I think for me, and I talked about this in the Story Slam, that, the first defining moment for me that I can remember is literally when I was 12 years old. And I had tried out for cheerleader in junior high school, and I was so excited, and I was, and I thought this was it, like so many people, of our generation. I didn't come from much, and there wasn't much expected of me. So when I decided to try out for cheerleader, I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to be seen. It's going to be fantastic. And I tried out. I did a great job, and I didn't make the team. I made it as the fourth alternate. And I thought, well, gosh, I thought I was pretty good. I mean, even in my, 12-year-old mind. And the sponsor, they weren't coaches then, the sponsor later put me on the team, and in a way that it didn't make sense, because I not only did I not make the team, I made it as the fourth alternate, right? Which is
Right.
like akin to everybody gets a trophy and you'll never get on that field. And the sponsor put me on the team, and in all of my innocence, I asked her why she moved me ahead of the other alternates and put me on the team. And she said very pointedly, she said, Charlene, well, you're Black, and I thought you'd be a troublemaker, so I didn't want you on the team.
Wow.
And now that I've seen you in class, because she was my homeroom teacher, my math teacher, says, now I've seen you in class, you're a nice little girl. And for whatever reason, Leslie, and I don't even know where the strength came from, I realized then that if I wasn't courageous, and if I wasn't brave, and if I didn't direct how people thought about me or who I was, then I was always my whole life going to be victim to who they thought I should be, you know,
Right.
and and I that played itself out. At that time when I was 12, I said to myself, well, I'm not going to give up my spot on the cheerleading team, but I'm going to prove to her that I'm so much more than what she thinks I am, right? Because
Yeah.
she made me feel ashamed for being who I was.
Yeah.
And so somewhere inside me, I developed the courage to say, I'm going to prove you wrong, and that served me well. But I will say that even too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, because that also set me on a path for the next 40 years of proving people wrong,
Hmm.
right? And
Wow.
always just being in that spot. And it wasn't until I was 53. I was diagnosed with cancer twice in 6 months. And so I was first diagnosed with uterine cancer. I had surgery, had that taken care of. 6 months later, I was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
That was not a 6 month journey. That turned out to be a 5 year journey. And in that process, I realized that there were lots of opportunities to be courageous about my health. And in the end, I realized that I had a huge opportunity to be courageous about me and
Yeah.
who I am and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in the world versus how I had been showing up in the world. Because I had been quite successful. I'd achieved more than most women, let alone Black women, had in my industry, which was at the time communications and crisis communications. And but what I'd realized is I'd spent all those years perfecting a persona of what people said I needed to be in order to be successful. And they were right because I was successful.
Right.
But then, and I realized literally at the top of my career, Leslie, I mean, I was killing it. And then I had to realize that actually showing up as someone else every day for decades was killing me.
Yeah.
And that's where my cancer came from.
Hmm.
And through that process, you'll never hear me say cancer was a gift,
Right.
because I wouldn't wish that gift on anybody. But through that process, and it went on so long, um, who I had worked so hard to become was stripped away. And I had to have the courage to figure out who I really was,
Right.
because I just created a facade, a beautiful facade for 40 years. But now what? And
Yeah.
that was probably not probably, that was the second most courageous point in my life, without a doubt, because I was stuck in between two worlds, neither of which I understood.
Right.
I couldn't go back to who I was, because that person didn't exist anymore. And I had no idea who I was becoming. And it
Yeah.
was just, it was awful, actually. It was really, really awful, and it was scary. And there was a point where I thought that it would be easier to not be alive than to
Oh,
be going through what I was going through.
right.
So, so I dug deep for courage.
Yeah. And I think that's really, Charlene, what I want this podcast to speak to is to give people
Mhm.
the courage to be who they want to be. I
Right.
interviewed somebody the other day and we talked about the little girl thing. And I said, we start as a little girl and then we start putting these coats on and these
Mhm.
facades and these I should be and I've got to
Mhm.
achieve. And, those are achievement oriented. It's like, I'm going to prove you and I'm going to do this. And we
Right.
just keep piling it on. And then you
Mhm.
wake up one day and whether it's, I think I found a lot of pivot points for women 50s. That
Yeah.
age, it's like, all
Mhm.
right, what's next? And I've seen a lot of
Mhm.
people redeveloping, recreating themselves, but then start throwing those things off. And and who
Absolutely.
do I want to be? And whether,
Mhm.
like you, it was a health scare.
Mhm.
We had that wonderful thing that happened in 2020. We're not going to mention, but
Right.
it had to recreate a lot of us, including me. And
Right.
we've had to do different things and just
Mhm.
realize, oh, what am I doing? Like, this is not the life I want to live.
Well, and I think that was it. It was, there are many more horrible things about that time period. Um, but a few good things to really come out of it is I think that it made us all step away from the proverbial hamster wheel that we were on, and to really stop and say, who am I? What
Right.
do I want? And what do I want the rest of my life to look like? Right?
Yeah.
Not just my career, but what do I want the rest of my life to look like? And then do I have the courage to make the decisions to make that happen?
Right. Be able to live our life. And that's
Mhm.
one thing I'm passionate about is, enjoying life. You can still be successful and achieve what you want and make a difference in people's lives, but enjoy your life while you're doing it.
Right, right. And I think for me, the definition of enjoying your life changed.
Yeah.
People would always say, well, you never want to be that person that, or they'd say, when you're taking your last breath, you're not going to say, gee, I wish I had finished that project. And whenever I heard people say that, I was like, oh, no, no, that would be me. That I would be the one to say, I wish I had finished that last project, or I wish I had achieved XYZ, because I was an achievement junkie.
Right.
That's where my
Addicting.
identity came from. That's where my worth in myself, that's where it all came from. So it wasn't just saying, okay, what do I want the rest of my life to look like? It was, do I want it to be this?
Right.
Right? Because you first have to answer that question before you can answer the question of, well, what do I want it to look like if I want it to be different?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a complete, um, a transformation. As I tell people, often now, that if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be living the life I am today, I would have said you were crazy. I said, there's no possible way.
Yeah.
I don't desire to be a keynote speaker. I definitely don't desire to be a coach, because I'd always seen coaching in companies as being punitive, and I didn't want any part of that.
How
Right.
funny.
I certainly didn't think that I'd ever write a book. But I realized, once I realized I had a voice, I found my voice, and then I decided to start using my voice, and really, what were the best ways to do that? And I decided going to a corporate office with my, invisible armor on every day was not the best way for me to do that.
Right. And you've got such an amazing story to be able to share that and give people courage and encourage
Thank you.
other people to, do that. Because, I mean, I left corporate America, gosh, 24 years ago, but I was not
Mhm.
a C-suite at that point. But, it was still scary, and so, the security, everybody asked me, like, what are you going to do when you quit your job? The big question everybody had was, what are you going to do about insurance?
Yeah.
I'm going to pay for it. Like,
Right,
I
right.
make enough money to pay for it, and you're paying for it with blood, sweat, and tears, and
Oh,
no vacation, and
right.
you
Well, and
know,
you're kind of hastening your need for it,
yeah,
because, since being sick, of course, you look at the contributors, right? You look at your genetic contributors, which I had none. And then the next thing you look at is stress. And you look at things like, you start watching your cortisol levels. And, my stress was off the charts.
oh yeah,
I was traveling all over the world, which I loved, or at least I thought I loved it. I was doing all kinds of important things, which to me made me an important person, right? Which was also really misaligned. And, you just get so caught up in it. And then I realized that, wow, yeah, I'm really glad I have this great healthcare, but maybe if I changed my life, I wouldn't need so much. Right?
I've never had that thought, but it's definitely a pivotal thought because, knock on wood, I'm healthy. Like,
Right, right.
rarely do I go to the doctor,
Hmm.
but I
Yeah.
think it's
Oh,
because I've created
absolutely.
a lifestyle that,
Mhm,
yes, there's stress, but it's not crazy stress, and I'm not playing the game that we played in corporate America.
mhm. Yeah, I was telling my husband, and I think if you're a woman, and especially if you're a minority woman, just the amount of hypervigilance that's required to not just walk in the world, but walk in the corporate world is really extreme.
Mhm.
And we get so used to it that we don't even realize the stress we're carrying before we even go into the office to deal with the stress that's brought on from
Yeah,
there. And I was telling my husband a couple of months ago, because it's been, 2020 was when I left the corporate world, and I told him, I said, I realized something today. And he's like, what? And half listening to me, I'm sure.
mhm.
And I said, for 3 years, I have not once walked into a room and felt like I needed to prove my worth to anyone. I
Wow,
said, not for 3 years. I said, I haven't done that in 50 years.
wow,
And to be able to have just sat back and realized that, to the point of my book that's called You Are Enough, to just realize I am enough. I don't
yeah,
have to walk into this room and prove to you that I am anything other than who I am. And
yeah,
I don't think that people recognize how many of us walk around every day feeling like whatever door I walk through are going to be people on the other side who are going to make me prove my value.
yeah,
And if you think about it, how humiliating is that?
yeah. Like, what are we
Right?
doing?
Yeah, it's like, why are we not just assumed to be
Yeah,
valued or valuable? And I used to wonder, when I was in corporate, you know, how much like you do I need to be before you, Mr. Executive, will see me first as human before you see me as a Black woman or whatever trope you might put on me if I raise my voice. It's like, how much like you do I have to be in order to be seen as human? And I just got tired of that. And it wasn't even just that I got tired of it, it's that it wore me down.
Yeah.
It
Made you
just,
sick.
yeah, it wore me down. And so, one of my mantras, and I use this in my keynote speeches as well, is it's choice, not chance, that changes your life. Right.
Yes.
So choose before chance takes over.
I love that.
Right. Because everything we want in life, everything we want to do is on the other side of fear. And on that other side of fear is choice. It
Right.
all starts with choice to me. And
Yeah.
so, so everybody I talk to,
choice.
yeah.
Just make that choice today and just do it.
Right. And, everybody always says, tomorrow's not guaranteed to you. And, we have all these types of little sayings and you know why they exist? Because they're true.
Yeah.
That's why. Right. So when it's like, oh, I'll do this tomorrow, I always say to myself, today is tomorrow.
So true.
Right.
Yeah.
So to your point with your podcast, why not today?
Yeah.
Right. What am I putting this off for?
And I think so many people, because of fear and not having the courage and what other people think, we don't do the things we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm so passionate about this message and really giving people courage to do the big things, but to do the little things and to put us first. And we are worthy. We are enough.
Right.
And, do the things that give us joy and keep us healthy and who we are.
Yeah. And I would say too, Leslie, discover the things that bring you joy, because I bet 3 out of 5 people, if you ask them what brings you joy, they probably don't know, right? They're going to say, oh, friends and family, but you know what? We all have friends that really don't bring us joy.
No.
And I'm willing to bet we have family members that don't bring us joy either, right? So once you get past the pat answers, what really does bring you joy? For me, it's playing with my obnoxious dogs. I've discovered that for me, it's taking a walk without headphones, without talking to someone on the phone, just walking and just paying attention to what's going on around me. The squirrel who's working furiously to try to get this piece of food up a tree, the little things. And when you can focus in on that and really identify those things, I think it's just beautiful. And it's when I was in corporate, if someone said those things to me, I was like, oh my gosh, are you going to start meditating next?
Exactly.
But there really is truth. There really is truth to those things. And it doesn't mean that you get rid of your edge or, it just means that you appreciate what's around you.
So true. Yeah. I was listening to something the other day and they said, pay attention to those little things.
Mm-hmm.
And I try, when I walk around Lake Ann a lot and
right.
I take pictures to say, okay, I want to remember this moment and look at the little flowers. And a friend of mine collects feathers, and whenever I see a feather, I click a picture and just
and send it to you.
Yeah, and just smell the roses, as they say.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's still so hard to get caught up in everything because these days there's a lot to get caught up in, but at the end of the day, the only person who can assure your happiness is you.
Yep.
And I think it's important to remember that. I tell people often, I said, you're waiting for the cavalry to come save you, but the cavalry is already here and it's you.
Yeah.
Right. So let's get on with it.
Yeah. Don't wait for the white horse and the person coming to save you.
Right. Because it's you. Recognize that it's you.
We need to take charge and put us first.
Mm-hmm. And it's so beautiful when you see people reach that point that they can do that they can put their fear aside and they, and they can say, I do have the power to make a choice. Mm-hmm. I do have the power to say, why wait until tomorrow? Why not today?
Right.
And I love seeing that when I give keynotes and I see the light go off in people's minds and they're like, wow, I just never thought about that. I have the power.
Right. It's shifting people's beliefs that we've been told for so many years. And we're allowed to have joy, and we're allowed to enjoy our life and be around the people we care about and do the things we want to do.
Right. Right. And we're, if I were to add to that, we're allowed to be good people.
Yeah.
One of the things I do, I talk a lot about in my leadership practice is that, with leaders, they're wearing armor too, right?
Mhm.
And it's like you can take that armor off. You can be human. You are allowed to be fallible. Um, you know, and that's I think what people want today is I think they want authenticity. I think they want
Right.
humanity. They want compassion in their leaders and in the people who are in their lives. And the more I see people embrace that, the happier I see people become.
Yeah. So true.
Mhm.
So you mentioned your book. So tell us.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I had it in my Amazon cart to order, and then I realized, you know what? It never showed up, so I never probably clicked the button. So
Yep. Leslie, go back and click that button.
I'm going back and clicking that button. I'm gonna go. I'm going to Florida in a couple of days. I'm gonna bring it
Ah,
with me.
great.
So
Great.
tell us about your book and what motivates you to do that. I know people
Yeah.
keep telling me with this message I should have a book, and that is the last thing in the world I want to do at this point. But never
Yeah.
say never.
Right. Well, and that's true. And I'll tell you, I did not aspire to be an author. I was not one of those people who always said, oh, when I take some time off, I'm going to write a book. That's what I really want to do. It wasn't that at all. It was, as I mentioned, I'd gone through this health crisis. I had decided that I needed to leave my high stress, high powered, high everything, high octane job,
Mhm.
and when I had cancer, I was never someone who said, I'm a woman of faith, and I never said, why me, God, why me? I just always said, tell me what you want me to do with this. If you're going to bring me through, tell me what I'm supposed to do with it.
Right.
And I woke up one day and I thought, I am supposed to write a book because I have the courage to tell the truth, to not sugarcoat what happens in the C-suite, to not like, sugarcoat my journey. And so I decided, well, okay, if I'm going to write a book, am I supposed to write a book about my cancer journey? And I realized, no, I'm supposed to write a book about my life journey. And so the title of my book is You Are Enough: Reclaiming Your Career and Your Life with Purpose, Passion, and Unapologetic Authenticity.
I love
And
that definition.
and the book is really all about that. It's about how, what I faced and how I reclaimed my life and my career unapologetically, and how others can do the same. So it's all nonfiction, of course, but it's part self-help, it's part how to, and it's also part how not to.
Right.
Right. So that you don't find yourself, at 50 something years old, either sick or standing at the top of the mountain saying to yourself, is this all there is? I went through all that for this. Right.
I've interviewed somebody else on the podcast that talked about, you know, we're whatever we're trying to achieve, or we get there and it's like it's not really what I wanted, or the adage of skip the beach trip so you can buy the beach house. What if you
Right.
get to that point and you skipped so many things? And
Right.
how can we
Right.
how can we share this message to younger girls? They
Hmm.
have to live through it and wait till they're 50 to figure this out, or hopefully they're figuring it out
Gosh.
earlier.
Well, and I can tell you if my late 20s girls are any indication, they figure it out a lot sooner.
Good.
Right. Of course, they're a completely, different generation. But even with my executive female clients, especially who are climbing the ladder, and they'll come to me because they'll know I've had the executive experience, and they want to know, what do I need to do to get there? And the first thing I ask them is, are you climbing toward that next high level position because you want it, or because you think you should want it?
Hmm.
I said, so think about it. And they'll say, oh, I want it. And I said, that's great, but I want you to take a couple of days and think about that question. And when
How
you've
often do they
answered
come
that,
back and say they don't really want it?
well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but I would say it's higher than 50-50
Oh yeah.
that they'll come back and they'll say, you know what? I'm happy where I am. and I'll ask them things like, well, do you really need that bigger house? Do you need that bigger car that you want? What would that look like? Are you going to buy
Right.
a better car? Are you going to spend more money on, are you going to, save things for a rainy day that isn't going to come because you're going to die from a heart attack at your desk? Or, just
Yep.
kind of what is it? And I tell them, I said, here's the secret nobody tells you when you're an executive woman and you start making really big money. What changes in your life is that your family has better vacations than they used to because you're
Yeah.
not there, right?
Yeah. You're working.
You're not there. You're the one flying in on the third day of the vacation and flying out on the fifth day, right?
Mhm.
And so it comes down to, really quality. What does quality mean to you? And I'm always really pleasantly surprised, although I don't judge, but pleasantly surprised at the number of women who come back to me and say, I really had to think about why I want to keep doing this and why the level that I'm at is not good enough for me, right? Or how
Yeah.
can I make the level I am better without having to give up so much of myself?
Yeah. Exactly. You know,
Mhm.
the old management principle, the Peter principle.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
People get promoted to obsolescence because they don't know how to do the job. They're happy this, but you got to give them the new title. And
Right.
my dad was a city planner, and he always talked
Uh-huh.
about, being in Northern Virginia, people kept moving further and further out to get the bigger house.
Right.
Well, and then they're commuting hours. They
Right.
don't get to enjoy their beautiful house, and they're
Mhm.
exhausted because, like, why do we need all the bigger things, the more things,
Right, right, and,
giving you joy?
creature comforts are nice, I'm not saying that they aren't,
No.
but I tell you, so we live in Ashburn, Virginia, and we have since 1995 is when we moved out here, and we always said, "Well, we're gonna get that even bigger house, we're just gonna move closer in because we'll have the money to do it," and we never did, and that was fine. And we were fortunate to have help with our kids and around the house because my husband and I both had very busy careers. When COVID hit and everything was shut down, I realized that we've been in this house now for almost 20 years. I realized that my nanny and my housekeeper had spent more time in my house than I had.
Oh, I'm sure.
They knew my house better than I did.
Yeah.
Right, and that was kind of a sobering moment. The day I hear this musical tone in my house, I'm thinking, "What is that?" And my nanny says, "It's the washing machine." I thought, "I didn't know it made noise when it
Never
stopped."
paid attention to it. You
Right,
haven't been here long enough. Yeah.
so it's, I don't begrudge anybody who wants more, who wants bigger, who wants any of those things. I just want them to ask themselves why and how is it going to make their life better,
Right.
and if they have an answer that is satisfactory to them, who am I to judge,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Because happiness looks different on everybody.
So
I
true.
just want people to have those things by choice, not
Yeah.
because they just fell into it.
Not by chance.
Right.
So
Exactly.
obviously your life is different and better and happier, and looks like you're
Mhm.
enjoying it and hopefully healthier. So how would you encourage somebody else? I know we've talked about a lot of different things, but the person that's
Yeah.
listening or
Y
watching this, how would you encourage them to take the step?
yeah, I would say, a couple of things. First and foremost, I tell everyone I talk to really recognize that you are enough, right? That you are everything you need to be. And all of those people, those voices who are telling you that you're not enough, silence them, even if they're in your own head. The second, and I mean this with every fiber of my being, it is choice, not chance, that changes everything,
Yeah.
right? And that can be a small choice, it can be a huge choice, but it changes everything. And it doesn't mean you have to change your life, your whole life. You have to pivot and go in a new direction. Start small, and work your way up. What's not working? Is there some way you want to show up differently? And then the other is, so once you realize those things, how do you do it? So, and that's where I get to my 7 seconds of courage. And if you look at a kind of what some of the research and neuroscientists will tell us is that that first 6 seconds are all fear. When we think we want to do something, that's when we're in our fight or flight mode. And what you want to do is get to that 7th second, because that's when one part of your brain, that fight or flight, shuts down and possibility opens up. And you just need to get to that 7th second. Just take that deep breath, get to that 7th second, and take action, whatever that is.
That way, I love that.
You
And
know,
say, why not today?
exactly. Why not today?
Yeah, I knew your message would be perfect for this podcast. So thank you. So to find your book, to find you, to contact you, to connect with you, I'm going to share it in the show notes. But what do you want to share as far as people where to get your book?
Well, certainly, first thing I would say is please follow me on LinkedIn and sign up for my newsletter. Okay. And on LinkedIn, you can just find me at Charlene.Wheeless, and you'll know because it's my speaking website, LinkedIn site, and you'll see that. My website is www.charlenewheeless.com. You can get my book there and some other goodies that are going up on my site soon. That are freebies that you can get and other things to purchase. And then, of course, my book is available in Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, and all of your other places, popular places, except the airport that you would buy a book. And it's available in hard copy as well as audiobook. And I am the narrator in the audiobook as well. And the only thing, if you buy the book through my website and send me a note, I'll actually send you a personalized autographed copy of it.
Ooh, okay.
Yes.
I don't know if I can get it by Saturday, but
you're in Reston. You could actually.
Good, okay, I do that. And I heard Barnes & Noble opened in Reston.
Yes. I know they have me on my book online. Some have it in store, some don't. I don't really understand how they figure that out. But
we have to coordinate to get a signed copy before.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. Yay. Well, thank you for being a guest, and I really enjoyed getting to know you and your story. Yes. And so you can find the Why Not Today podcast at any place podcasts are. We do have a website called whynottodaypodcast.com, and we have Why Not Today swag. So if you want to encourage other people, or you want to be encouraged daily, we've got stickers and T-shirts and cups and all kinds. Looking at some other fun things. So feel free to share anybody listening, share the podcast, rate it, comment, and review it. And thank you, Charlene. So much fun to know you. Yes. And everybody listening, thank you for listening or watching. And don't forget, say why not today.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. And thank you to your listeners and viewers.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.